Hey guys, what's up and welcome back to the channel. This right here is my brother's 6-year-old PC, and how would it hold up with the recent games that we have today? Let's find out. When I first got my hands on this computer, it was a very incredible experience. Back then, I was just used to going to computer cafes and using laptops for schoolwork. I only played a couple of games on it, mainly Dota 2 and Warframe, games that I no longer play today. And for the specs, the case is a Cooler Master N300. It's rocking an i5-4440, a 4-core 4-thread processor with a base clock of 3.1 GHz. For the graphics card, it has a Power Color Radeon R7 260X, the overclocked version, which is funny because we didn't know anything about overclocking back then. For the rest of the specs, it has an Asus H81MD for the motherboard, 4GB of HyperX DDR3 at 16MHz for the RAM, a Cougar SL500W for the power supply, 500GB Seagate Barracuda for mass storage, and finally a 120 Golden Fur SSD as the boot drive. This is one cheap SSD that gets the job done. I did a comparison of it and the Samsung 860 EVO, which you can check in this video right here. Now let's get into the benchmarks. So first is Apex Legends in 1080p. I have everything on low except for the model quality, which is on medium. The system is dishing out a good average of 66 FPS and 1% low of 54 FPS, which can result to a good gaming experience. For some of those who don't know what 1% low is, I see it as stutters within the game where a frame stops for a noticeable split second. We'll get to this in detail in another video, so stay tuned for that. Next game is Warzone. I have this on the lowest preset and I did a 1080p and 720p comparison. In 1080p, I got an average FPS of 45 and 1% low of 32. In 720p, an average FPS of 46 and 1% low of 43. Now this is a good example of why 1% low is important, because although you might think that the numbers are almost the same, the 720p having a 1% low of 43 FPS means that your actual FPS in-game is not dropping lower than that, which will result into a much consistent and better gaming experience. Next we have PUBG, also at the lowest preset. In 1080p, it gets an average of 51 FPS with a 1% low of 24 FPS, and in 720p, it gets an average of 77 and a 1% low of 25. Next in line is Rainbow Six Siege in low preset. For this test, we're using the in-game benchmark and the system was able to average an FPS of 95 and 1% low of 75 in 1080p. And in 720p, it had an average of 162 with a 1% low of 113, which is a very noticeable difference compared to the 1080p. I tested Monster Hunter World next in the lowest possible preset, and in 1080p, I got an average of 41 with a 1% low of 19. While in 720p, it had an average of 43 with a 1% low of 19. There's barely a difference, but I can still say that it's playable. However, I did just walk around the map and didn't really do any actual combat, so you could take this with a grain of salt. Last but not least is Tomb Raider, and this game was released back in 2013, but I wanted to know how the system will handle it. Using the in-game benchmark in normal settings, I got an average FPS of 82 with a 1% low of 80. I didn't bother trying to do 720p for this game, but I did try cranking up the settings. In high, I was able to get an average FPS of 74 with a 1% low of 60. I wanted to compare the actual game FPS and in the in-game benchmark FPS, and it does drop from 80 to 65, 70. Switching it to Ultra, it drops to 50 average and 49 1% low. Overall, a very playable experience. I guess this game isn't that demanding, but then again, this game is from 2013. With a couple of tweaks in the settings, this i5-4440 and R7 260X combo held itself pretty well with the games I've thrown at it. But if you were to build your own computer, is it worth getting these parts? The CPU can be a good deal if you can maybe get it for not more than 3,000 pesos in the used market, but I'd say just put that 3K aside, save, and get a better CPU. As for the graphics card, the R7 260X being a direct competitor to the 750 Ti, with the 750 Ti being slightly better, I'd say if you can get it for not more than 2,500 pesos, that could be a good deal. Overall, you'd be better off saving up and getting something better if you're planning to build yourself a whole computer in 2020. That's it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and if you did, smash that like, feel free to subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video.